All right, if you were going to use algebra to solve this problem, you would realize that we don't know the cost of the lawnmower before tax. So I'm going to call it X. Have no idea what it is. And what happens to X is it gets multiplied by 0.0825. Now the first zero is optional. That's the same thing as 0.0825. I put that zero there because it calls your attention to the decimal point. And to remind you of where that comes from, the 8.25% is the percent, and you change it to a decimal by moving the point 2 places to the left. Well, one place would give you 0.825, but that's 82.5%. So you got to have move it 2 places, so you have to insert a zero there. Now here is, if whether or not you remember factoring, the kind of factoring where you have this, where you have an X here and an X here, you can factor out the X. And whatever X is, X times 1 is X. So this X here is actually 1X. Okay, yeah, that's cool. And just like 1X plus 3X is 4X, yeah, well, 1X plus 0.0825X, believe it or not, you have to add 1 to 0.0825. Now, you can use your calculator, but I bet you can do it in your head. But just in case, I had a student last semester tell me 1 plus 0.0825. Now, the new skill, you no longer have to know how to do everything with pencil and paper, but you do need to make sure you get the right answer. And one thing you can do to prevent a lot of errors is once you punch in the number, before you hit equals, look at it. Seriously, look at it and go, is that the number that I want? And if it's not, fix it. And if it is, continue. So a student said to me, I did 1 plus 0.0825, and I got, there's going to be a 1 up here right there. I got 1.0825, but I know that's wrong. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. He said 1 plus 0.0825 should be 0.0826. And I'm like, no, that's really not how you do it, unfortunately. Okay, so now you have 1.0825 times X equals 1623.75. And the way we solve that, I bet you remember, is we divide. Now, the good news is we have a calculator to do this. This is the yucky part. The yucky part is 1623.75 divided by 1.08. And I used to have to teach this in class because people forgot how to do long division. No more. Hooray for calculators. And if you wanted to see the done by hand here, 1 plus 0.0825. See, you got to line the points up here when you add and subtract. It's just 1.0825. Now, this 1 is 100%. So another way of saying this is 100% of X plus 8.25% of X is the same thing as 1X plus 0.0825X. And that turns out to be 108.25X, which is 108.25X percent of, that's important to know. All right, now here's a big clue. When you have percent of something, that means multiply. Like 50% of 12 is 6. You multiply 12 by 0.5. Okay, cool. And of course, 100% is 1. 8.25% is 0.0825. Again, we divide. And but what's the answer? Well, the answer is 1623.75. And don't forget to look at it. Yep, that's right. Divided by 1.0825. Again, look at it. And 2 people got 1,500. Way to go. That's awesome. My goal is for everyone to be able to do this problem. All right. The next part of the lesson, I'm going to refer you to your book that I sent you in Canvas mail. And one of the problems on page 5 is problem 8. Now, this little bit of information is going to be incredibly important in your understanding of percent. So I'm just asking you to please pay attention. Okay, here we go. A car dealer agreed to discount the $18,000 sticker price by 20%. Added to the cost are 6.25% sales tax on the discounted price and $85 in non-taxable fees. What is the total drive out cost? Okay, here is how most people work this problem, and it's not wrong. It's good. Most people say, you know what? 18,000, take away 20%. Okay, 20%, the decimal point is right there between the 0 and the percent sign. Moving it 2 places to the left gives you 0.2. And you could put 0.20, but you don't have to. If you put 0.20, you're going to get 36,000, 18,000. Yeah, you'll be, but then you point off 2 places. So, and that's if you did it by hand, but you're going to use a calculator. You do 18,000 times 20% is 3,600. Subtract 3,600 from 18,000 and get 14,400. Now, here it is. This is the important. How funny. I was just reading the chat. Somebody changed the answer to 1489.80. That's kind of cute. Okay. Here we go. See if this makes sense to you. If you buy something that's 20% off, then it's going to leave the other 80% that's not off. Does that make sense? Seriously, if you're shopping and something is $200 and it's 20% off, then it's 80% not off. So in this case, 20% discount, instead of calculating the 20% that you're not going to pay, it's quicker to calculate the 80% that you are going to pay. I'm hoping this makes sense. The sticker price of 18,000 is cut up into 2 pieces. The 20% you don't pay and the 80% that you do. And you can calculate either one you want. What most people do is calculate 20% off and subtract it. But look how quick this is. I can do 100% minus 20% in my head. That's how good I am at math. 100 minus 20 is 80. And 80% is 0.8. And when you multiply that, wow, you get the same answer. How cool is that? Okay, now there's more to this cool way business. Again, this is the usual way and it's good and you need to know it. And it makes a lot of sense. So the discounted price is 14.4 and added to that is 6.25% sales tax on the discounted price. So I'm going to change 6.25% by moving the point 2 places to the left and get 0.0625. And I do not do this by hand. I do it with a calculator. Yeah, because it's faster and more accurate than I am. Always looking at the calculator. 14,400 times 0.0625 is 900. You can double check me later. But the other way to get 900 is to realize this. If you have a number like 14,400 and you're going to increase it by 6.25%, that's the same thing as taking 100% plus 6.25%, and that's 106.25%. And when you change that to a decimal, instead of being 106.25, it's going to be 1.0625, 1 plus the tax rate as a decimal. And you do that on your calculator, and you get 15,300 right away. Now, and looky here, it's way down here, same number. That's cool. Yes. And then it says, and then you have to have $85 in non-taxable fees. All right, so Then you're going to add $85 and get that, 15,385. Now, the reason that this is important is not that the usual way doesn't work, but there is another problem that's similar to this, except it starts off at the bottom. It says that this thing ended up costing $15,385 after you had $85 in fees and you had 6% tax added to the discounted price, and the discounted price was 20% off the sticker price. Whoa, this is a lot of words. It's in your book though, so this is good news. So what was the number before we added $85? Well, if you add $85 to something and you get 15,385, don't you just subtract 85 from 15,385? Yes. And when you do that, you get 15,300. So here's the calculation here. There's the top part. Subtract that. Now, if you know that this 15,300 includes the tax, you cannot get the amount before tax by multiplying that by 0.0625. It doesn't work. Why? Because look up here. The tax is 0.0625 times a number that we don't know yet on this side. We don't know what it is. But whatever it is, if you did this the cool way, you go, hey, look, the 15,300 is 1 plus the tax rate times something. And so, yeah, so how do you do that? Well, this is 1 point the tax rate times something. So the answer is I divide 15,300, which is the numerator. I divide it by 1.0625. And by golly, I get 15,300. Excuse me, 14,400. Okay, now the 14,400 represents 20% off of the sticker price, and that means that 14,400, is 80% of something. 80% of what? Well, how I get this is I divide 14,400 by 0.8, which we'll do on a calculator. Now, one cool thing about this is, if I can find a good spot for my calculator, 14,400 divided by 0.8. Normally, when we divide something, the answer gets smaller than what we're dividing. But in this case, we're dividing by 0.8, and 0.8 is a number between 0 and 1. So in other words, this 14,400 is 80% of something. Of course, it's going to be 80% of something bigger than 14,400. Oh, so when you divide that by 0.8, you get, amazingly, 18,000. All right. One more example is number 9 on page 5, which I have worked out in painful detail on page 8. In this case, you know the total was $15,432 for his new truck. Let's highlight that, including $115 in fees, which were not taxed. And how do I know that? Because the tax was 6% on the actual cost of the truck. And we don't know the actual cost of the truck, but whatever it is, the actual cost was 15% less than the sticker price. Okay, so let's dissect that. So we don't know what was the cost before fees, but we can figure it out because why? The bottom line is 15,432, and that is $115 added on to something. Well, that's easy. It's 15,432 minus 115. Does that make sense? And of course, that turns out to be 15,317. Well, that number, if you do it the cool way, you realize it's 1.06. So you can't do 6% of 15,317. That's not the tax. The tax was 6% of some other number that we don't know. But whatever that other number is, when you take a number and add 6% to it, you wind up with 106% of it. 106% is 1.06. So now you just divide 15,317 by 1.06, and that's what this calculation tells you. And that turns out to be 14,450. And that is the discounted price. It's 15% off, but you don't know what is 15% of what. But you do know that if it's 15% off, it's 85% on. So 85% of something is 14,450. And if you divide that by 0.85, which that 14,450 divided by 0.85, you get 17,000. This is powerful. I will tell you, I would be surprised pleasantly if anybody in class could work this problem without some instruction. Yes, it's probably something new, and it's probably something that's not going to make sense for a while. So here's my pep talk. Please show up unless you have a bona fide emergency and you can't come to class. Please show up. Please do the homework. Even though it's not graded, you will be quizzed on it. Please do the homework. Please come to class and ask questions. How do you know what to ask? When you do your homework and you don't get the answer that I give you, then one of us is wrong. And it could be a typo on my part. And I hope to fix all those. All right. Whew. So that is the story on I think it's number is 8 and 9. Yeah, 8 and 9. Now